stop for a moment, because NASA is no longer speaking about the moon the way it did a few years ago. This is no longer only about planting boots in lunar dust, taking iconic photographs, and coming home. Now the language is different. Now the words are landers, rovers, infrastructure, surface power, communications, habitation, logistics, and repeated missions. NASA is no longer talking only about returning to the moon. It is talking about building there. And that changes everything. Because once a space agency begins discussing not just arrival, but systems, repetition, supply chains, and permanent capability, the story stops being a mission. It starts becoming civilization. Before we go deeper, subscribe to Endless Astra for more real cosmic stories built on science, not fiction. The June 2026 moon base update made one thing clear. NASA wants the moon to become more than a destination. It wants it to become a place where humanity can operate again and again, test technologies, build confidence, and eventually support a lasting human presence. And the heart of that vision is the lunar South Pole. That part matters because the moon is not equally useful everywhere. Some places are scientifically interesting, some are historically important, but the South Pole is different. It may contain water ice in permanently shadowed regions. It may offer access to long-duration resources, and it is one of the best places to test the kind of systems humans would need if they ever hope to live and work away from Earth for extended periods. NASA's current roadmap is being broken into phases. Phase 1 is about getting to the moon reliably, repeatedly, and with enough variety to reduce risk. That means sending many robotic missions, using multiple landers, putting instruments on the surface, learning the terrain, understanding illumination, temperatures, dust, surface strength, and survival conditions. NASA officials made it very clear that they do not want to rush straight into a finished moon base. They want repetitions. They want lessons. They want to do what worked in the early space age, build capability step by step. That may not sound dramatic at first, but it is actually the reason this update matters so much. Because this is how real expansion begins. Not with one giant leap, but with a system that learns how to stay. NASA described Phase 1 as serving 3 major goals. First, get to the moon reliably with repeated robotic missions. Second, gather real ground truth from the South Pole environment. And third, begin testing the technologies that will later become part of permanent infrastructure. That means the moon base is not a single structure waiting to be assembled like a prefabricated building. It is a gradual construction of knowledge, hardware, and confidence. And NASA already named some of the pieces. Officials discussed a growing set of commercial landers and surface systems that are moving toward flight. Blue Origin's Mark I lander, Astrobotic's Griffin mission, Intuitive Machines hardware, Firefly's Blue Ghost line, and future lander classes that could support not only science payloads, but the broader architecture needed for a moon base. NASA is not betting on one machine and hoping for the best. It is building a layered approach with multiple vendors, multiple flights, and multiple opportunities to learn. That is important because the moon is not easy. The lunar South Pole is one of the hardest operational environments humanity has ever seriously targeted. Illumination is complex because the sun sits very low on the horizon. Temperatures can swing brutally. Some regions can become unimaginably cold in shadow. Dust and plume interactions during landing can threaten nearby equipment. Terrain mapping is still not good enough in the way future crews will need. Even something as basic as how tall a solar mast must be to make power practical in certain locations remains an open engineering question. And that is exactly why NASA keeps emphasizing robotic groundwork. They are not treating the moon as a symbolic stop. They are treating it as a place where hard-won operational knowledge must be built piece by piece. The update also showed something else that should not be overlooked. NASA is thinking in terms of infrastructure now, not just visits, infrastructure. That includes communication systems, navigation capability, surface preparation, long-duration mobility, power systems, and eventually habitation. NASA's officials talked about Phase 2 as the point where some of the permanent pieces start arriving. That includes power and navigation, completing communications constellations, and preparing the surface itself for more demanding operations.
That is a huge conceptual shift, because once you begin laying down systems that support future systems, you are no longer running isolated missions. You are building a frontier. And then comes Phase 3. That is where the vision becomes unmistakable. Longer duration human missions, habitation, logistics, cargo return, a moon base with initial real capability. Not a science fiction city,
Not a gleaming movie colony under a dome, but something much more serious. The first durable human operating framework beyond Earth. And that is why this update feels bigger than a normal NASA press event. It reveals the shape of intent. NASA officials repeatedly emphasized that they do not want one grand attempt followed by a long silence. They want rhythm. They want mini landings. They want to learn from each mission and feed those lessons into the next one. That philosophy may sound conservative, but it is exactly how near impossible things become real. And they are not only thinking about new hardware. One of the most fascinating parts of the update was the discussion of repurposing existing NASA hardware for lunar use. Officials talked about the possibility of sending PROMISE, an engineering development unit related to the Mars rover class, to the Moon. A rover architecture built for brutal conditions, potentially adapted for the lunar South Pole. That alone shows the mindset NASA is entering. If useful hardware exists, if the taxpayers already invested in it, and if it can help accelerate lunar capability, NASA is willing to think boldly about how to use it. That same mentality appeared in their broader comments about landers, payloads, technology demonstrations, and even early habitation concepts. Surface power, inflatable habitat ideas, cargo movement, terrain preparation, survival in extreme cold, long traverses into shadowed regions. All of these are no longer abstract talking points. They are beginning to be treated as near-term engineering pathways. And behind all of this is a deeper reason the Moon matters. The Moon is close enough to learn hard lessons without going all the way to Mars first. NASA officials framed this clearly. The International Space Station taught humanity a great deal about keeping people alive and functioning in space. But the Moon, especially the South Pole, offers the next logical step. It is far enough away to be serious, harsh enough to be meaningful, close enough to remain reachable. If humans ever hope to conduct long, deep space missions, if they ever hope to live beyond low Earth orbit in a sustainable way, then the Moon is where many of those lessons will have to become real. That is why this is not just a Moon story. It is a species story. Because the first place humanity truly tries to build off Earth may define how it later builds anywhere else. Mars gets more headlines when people want drama, but the Moon is where the hard discipline begins. The logistics, the testing, the failures, the repeated attempts, the systems that must work not once, but again and again. The transformation from expedition to presence. And that is what the June 2026 update really revealed. NASA is no longer asking only how to return to the Moon. It is asking how to stay, how to operate, how to prepare the ground, how to move across it, how to power hardware through brutal conditions, how to survive the lunar night, how to land repeatedly without destroying nearby assets, how to turn a place visited into a place used. That is the real beginning of a moon base. Not one dramatic construction montage, not one single heroic mission, but the moment a civilization starts solving the boring, difficult, expensive, repetitive problems that every real frontier demands. And maybe that is what makes this update feel so historic. Because for decades, the Moon lived mostly in two categories: memory and fantasy. Memory because of Apollo, fantasy because of everything people imagined would come next. Now, slowly, painfully, technically, it is moving into a third category: planning, procurement, hardware, testing, iteration, reality. NASA still has a long road ahead. Missions can slip, vendors can fail, hardware can break. South Pole conditions remain harsh and partly unknown. Funding, politics, launch readiness, and engineering complexity can change the pace of everything. But none of that changes the bigger shift in language. The Moon is no longer being discussed as a brief return. It is being discussed as the site of humanity's first real off-world infrastructure campaign. That is the part people should pay attention to. Because if this roadmap succeeds, future generations may one day look back at updates like this the way we look back at early runway tests, shipyards, and railway lines. Quiet beginnings, technical beginnings, beginnings that did not yet look like history while they were happening, but they were. And if NASA, industry, and international partners can keep turning these phases into real surface capability, then the Moon may become the first place where humanity stops merely visiting space and starts building inside it. Not someday in the abstract, but now, in phases, in hardware, in landers, in rovers, in power systems, in real missions, with real consequences.
The moon base is not finished. It is not even close. But after this update, one thing is harder to deny than ever before. It has begun. Drop a comment. What do you think humanity will build first on the moon that truly changes everything? Power systems, mobility, habitation, or something we are not even thinking about yet?